Sir William Robert.
In view of the terrible loss of life in the South Atlantic, and the rapidly escalating military confrontation, will the Prime Minister make a further effort today for a peaceful solution to the situation, involving probably the United Nations?
Mr. Speaker, sir, we all regret the loss of human life in the South Atlantic, but our first duty is to protect and to minimize the danger to our own forces in the South Atlantic. We're there because we all agreed we should send a task force, because we all agreed we must stop the invader, and because the vast majority of people in this House recognize that the best way to stop the trouble is to withdraw the forces from the Falkland Islanders. Of course, the efforts to seek for a peaceful solution continue and will continue vigorously. My right honourable friend will be reporting later on his visit to the United Nations. We shall pursue a peaceful settlement either there or through other means.
Peter Emery.
Speaker, will my right honourable friend say over and over and over again that until the Argentine government withdraw its troops from the Falkland Islands, every injury and fatality in the southern Atlantic is due absolutely to the action of the Argentine junta?
Mr. Speaker, sir, yes, it was the Argentines who broke the peace with unprovoked aggression. They're on British sovereign territory. There are British people under the heel of the junta, and we sent the task force in order to rectify that situation. We hope to do it by peaceful means. We shall still continue to try. But in the meantime, our first duty must be to protect our own boys.
Michael Putt.
I press the right honourable lady on the question of the sinking of the cruiser and the tragic loss of life involved. Of course, we are all deeply concerned about it, just as we are all deeply aware that the origin of the crisis was the aggression by the Argentine. Nonetheless, the government has direct responsibilities in this matter, and the right honourable lady especially. So can she tell us what political control there was over this development, which was a major development? Can she say what calculations about the minimum use of force entered into those considerations? And returning to the question put by my honourable friend from this side a few minutes ago, can she tell us exactly what are the next steps which are going to be taken by the government to try and deal with this situation? Because there's always the danger that such an event as the sinking of the ship is going to recur, and that it can recur, and our own servicemen can be in danger. And we on this side are as determined to protect them as anybody in the country.
Mr. Speaker, I wholly share the right honourable gentleman's view that we must protect the lives of our own servicemen, whose very great skill and courage we applaud and admire. With regard to that particular event and to all events other than the mere tactical ones in the South Atlantic, the task force is clearly and was clearly under political control. May I make perfectly clear that after the announcement of the military exclusion zone, and I referred to this in the House last week, there was another announcement on the 23rd of May, which was communicated both to the Argentine government and on the 23rd of April, communicated to the Argentine government and also to the United Nations. It may perhaps help if I read it in full. In announcing the establishment of a maritime exclusion zone around the Falkland Islands, Her Majesty's government made it clear that this measure was without prejudice to the right of the United Kingdom to take whatever additional measures may be needed in the exercise of its right of self-defence under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. In this connection, Her Majesty's government now wishes to make clear that any approach on the part of Argentine warships, including submarines, naval auxiliaries or military aircraft, which could amount to a threat to interfere with the mission of the British forces in the South Atlantic will encounter the appropriate response. Warning was given to the Argentine government again, I repeat, on the 23rd of April. It was reported to the United Nations on the 24th of April.
To Michael Foot.
All of us can understand the documents that have been put in the library on this matter, but the Right Honourable Lady has not fully explained why, in fact, such a development of this occurred in the circumstances in which it did occur, nor has she explained why the maximum, or at any rate a very considerable amount of force was used in order to carry it out. None of these things have been explained. They will need to be explained much more fully to the country and to others. And will the Right Honourable Lady appreciate that these are very important matters, of course, for our own servicemen, and we wish to protect them as much as anybody. They're also important for the support that this government may be able to command throughout the world in these matters. And if the Right Honourable Lady and the government do not appreciate that the sinking of the cruiser raises very great questions of this kind, then she doesn't understand the situation.
Mr. Speaker, sir, may I make it perfectly clear that the worry that I live with hourly is that the Argentine forces and attack, both naval and air, may get through to ours and sink some of our ships. And I'm sure that that will also be very much in the Right Honourable Gentleman's mind. There was clear aggressive intent on the part of the Argentinian fleet and government. You can see that first in their claims that they had previously claimed that they'd sunk HMS Exeter, that they'd damaged HMS Hermes, leaving it inoperative, badly damaged, that they had brought down 11 Harriers. This was clear evidence of Argentine aggressive intent. Also, perhaps the Right Honourable Gentleman will remember the persistent attacks throughout the whole of Saturday on our own task force, only repelled by the supreme skill and courage of our people. You will also know, or know from my Right Honourable friend, or hear from my Right Honourable friend, the very heavy armaments which the cruiser carried. And the cruiser, of course, was accompanied by 2 destroyers who were not attacked in any way.
Mr. Michael Mates.
Would my Right Honourable friend agree that for all the uses to which that word's been put in the last weeks, the word paramount applies most of all now to the safety and lives of our servicemen in the South Atlantic? And would she further agree that this House of Commons, having agreed to send the task force to back up our diplomacy, cannot now flinch from the consequences that may occur, however serious they are?
Mr. Speaker, I wholly agree with my honourable friend. Our first duty is to our own forces, who are there at our orders and with our support, and we must look after their safety. Our second duty is to see that we do try to use minimum force, but that cruiser and associated destroyers, and of course there are other task forces of the Argentinian Navy also at large in the South Atlantic, not far from the exclusion zone, they do pose a very obvious threat to the men in our task force, and had we left it any later, it would have been too late. Then I might have had to come to the House with the news that some of our ships had been sunk.
To Tandiel.
Number 2, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, my Right Honourable friends, the Secretaries of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs and for Defence, will be making full statements after questions on recent diplomatic and military developments, respectively.
Tandiel.
Prime Minister referred to political control. Did she herself personally and explicitly authorize the firing of the torpedoes at the Belgrano?
Mr. Speaker, I assure the honourable gentleman that the task force is under and was under full political control.
And Biggs-Davison.
Were not some of the ignorant and irresponsible questions coming from the other side, could they not have been avoided if the Right Honourable Gentleman, the Leader of the Opposition, had done his duty to his party and the country, and as a Privy Councillor, to avail himself of my Right Honourable friend the Prime Minister's invitation to acquaint him with matters with which we, who are not sworn of the Privy Council, do not wish to have access, because we have confidence in our handling of this affair and in Her Majesty's motive.
Speaker, it is for the right honourable gentleman to say whether he will avail himself of any offer to talk on Privy Councillor terms. It's for the right honourable gentleman to decide whether he should avail himself or not. Apart from that, it may concern right honourable and honourable gentlemen on that side, but he did not wish to do so. In the meantime, I do just beg him to have some regard to the practical considerations which affect our operations in the South.
Would the right honourable lady now care to read out to the House what she herself said on the matter of this consultation on the Panorama programme a few days ago? And will she not also repeat to the House what I think she's understood well before, the attitude that has been taken by many leaders of the opposition in previous times, who have thought that it would be a failure of their duty to the House and the Commons to gag themselves? If the leader of the late Liberal Party wants to do it, he's perfectly entitled to do it. But I'd be very happy if the right honourable lady would read out to the House and the country her own words on this subject.
I do not quarrel with the right honourable gentleman's decision at all in any way. I make an offer available on the same basis to himself as to the right honourable gentleman, the leader of the Liberal Party and the leader of the SDP in this House. Whether or not he takes it up is a matter for him. I have been in a similar position myself. There have been times when I've taken it up and times when I haven't.
Anthony Kershaw.
To the cruiser, how can anybody maintain that such a ship, armed in that way, accompanied by those destroyers, is not a threat to our forces? And will my right honourable friend also bear in mind that the first communique about the sinking from the Argentine side said that the ship was all right except damage to its steering. If that were true, does that not show that the minimum force was then used?
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend. The cruiser posed a real threat to our forces then and would have continued to do so in the days in the future.
Joe Grimman.
In view of these events in the South Atlantic, it's not the time now come for a fresh direct approach by Her Majesty's government to the South, proposing that they evacuate the Falkland Islands.
Well, she's gagged still, all right.
And that then negotiations can be entered into directly between us. After all, we are not yet at war.
Mr. Speaker, the moment we prefer to do our approach is through a third party. Mr. Hague did valiant work. It is very clear that he is still interested in trying to bring about a solution both through himself. As the right honourable gentleman also have read, there are certain initiatives being undertaken by Mr. Hague through the Peruvian government, and we are pursuing those vigorously. We've not gone through the junta itself. It's not easy to see who one would be negotiating with, whether it be the president or the other members of the junta or the generals behind them, and throughout that has been a very, very difficult problem.
To Tim Brinton.
Number 3, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Brinton.
Is my right honourable friend aware that she still has massive support for her government's policies? Is she also aware that there are 2 former colonies in the world today and about 20 countries? The 2 colonies have less than 8,000 population. These 20 countries have less land area than the Falkland Islands. Will she make sure that Britain does not deviate in her determination to demonstrate that armed, unprovoked aggression must never be made to pay?
Mr. Speaker, I believe what my honourable friend says about there being small countries in the Commonwealth and countries with smaller areas than the Falklands is correct. I entirely agree with him that unless this country manages to stop and undo the Argentine aggression, there will be many other small countries and other territories who will go in fear that they may suffer the same fate.